the Paris commitments.
Cop-outs and accounting tricks.
Our 26% target.
I think you'll meet it in a can.
I do, Barry. I do.
3 years ago, Australia signed on the dotted line and committed to reduce emissions by at least 26% from our 2005 levels.
Australia has ratified the Paris Agreement on climate change.
In today's numbers, it means our emissions need to fall by 395 million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent between now and 2030. So, how's that going? Well, the trouble is, not only are we not on track to meet that target, our emissions are actually increasing.
Emissions haven't been going down, and on the government's own projections, they won't be going down out to 2030.
Unless you read this report from the Department of Environment and Energy. It shows that Australia will indeed meet and beat the target.
Australia is meeting and beating our emissions reduction target.
Confused? Me too. Remember the 395 million tonnes of carbon emissions that need to fall by 2030? Well, according to the report, about 411 tonnes will be carried over as credits from the Kyoto Protocol. This makes it look like we go above and beyond the target, but in reality, it is not an actual reduction.
The best analogy, perhaps, is if someone does pretty badly in their final high school exams and then comes around and claims that they did really well in year 7 and year 8, and please can they have some credit for that to get a better final grade in their high school certificate.
The credits are actually an accounting trick that come from beating our Kyoto targets.
Australia threatened to block the Kyoto Protocol unless it got very lenient targets that allowed it to increase its emissions. We're boasting about overachieving on those targets in order to avoid cutting emissions in the future.
The government says it has earned the right to use the credits, but it's not even clear that we're allowed to.
The problem is that these credits have no legal basis, no environmental justification, and no international support.
And we're the only signatory out of 195 that's using the loophole.
It unfortunately sets a precedent for other countries to use their own loopholes with their own old credits, which would completely undermine any environmental benefits from reducing emissions globally.
The reality is that in 2030, our emissions are only expected to be 16% lower than in 2005, instead of the 26% we promised. The government's own Climate Change Authority found Australia's emissions reduction goal should be at least 45%. Even with our special credits, we still won't get anywhere near that figure.
Study after study after study shows that we can take strong action on climate change, make deep cuts in emissions at minimal economic cost, and increasingly with the low cost of renewables. Australia, with such good resources of sun and wind, has a real opportunity to make the most of renewable energy.